So, welcome to The Showcase, the podcast that lifts the lid on life as a trailblazer in the world of arts and entertainment. And when we started this show, I thought I'd do anything to get this next guest on.
I see what you did.
His show-stopping talents have been praised by luminaries including Jennifer Saunders, Bill Nighy, Joe Brand, and Sir Ian McKellen. And his rich body of work has included roles in Only Fools and Horses the Musical, which earned him a What's on Stage nomination, Mother Goose, Nativity, and now Oliver. If I could sum up his extensive reviews and plaudits in 3 words, it would definitely be stole the show. And to boot, he's a bit of a sort. Please welcome Oscar Conlon-Morrey.
Oh, I want that embossed on a plaque.
Well, I did tell you I'd done my research, didn't I? So, and that was all entirely accurate, wasn't it?
It was.
So,
for the most part.
and you're here today to steal the show again.
Get ready.
I mean, just from that list of shows in itself, you have had an astonishing run of success since 2018, I think it was, when you opened in Only Fools and Horses. Or was it 2019?
2018, 2017 was my first job in town at the Arts Theatre in Toxic Avenger.
Oh, yes.
Das Musical.
Yes.
And then I went from there into
Only Fools and Horses. And have pretty much worked continuously since. I know there has been a pandemic, which we'll try to talk as little about as possible.
I loved it.
But if someone asked you what your USP as a performer is, what would you say?
I'm a big girl who can move. People don't expect it.
Is that at the top of your performance CV?
It is. Spotlight, highly skilled. I think there's a comedy in being a larger person who is able to shift themselves. And I can do pratfalls, I can do, jumping from one side of the stage to the other, landing on my head. And it's funny. And I think that was my niche when I started out.
Yeah.
And from there, I kind of tried to climb the ladder. But we're all just obviously making it up as we go along and desperately trying to...
Do you, on that point though, do you then feel a pressure to kind of maintain a certain weight in the sense that if that's part of your makeup as a performer?
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's not necessarily a pressure to keep the weight on. It's a pressure to enjoy a positive relationship with my larger self. And I think there are so many societal pressures and pressures from within the industry as well that mean that it's difficult for a person who is a bigger person to exist within this industry. But for me, I'm so at peace with myself. I love myself, and I am very proud of who I am and what I look like. And so the fact that it also works for me in a career way, in a casting way, just facilitates that even more, which
And it sort of leads me on to what I was going to ask as well, but there are very few people who kind of graduate and then do work continuously thereafter.
Yeah.
Why do you think that's largely been the case for you? Do you think, again, it is down to that USP?
Yes, I think so. And I think most of the work that I have done has progressively has been because I've had someone that I've worked with on a previous job or someone that I've reached out to. I'm very proactive. I don't have an agent. I represent myself. And so when I want something, I know what I want and I go and get it. I don't wait for someone to offer it to me.
Yeah.
And that has kind of been the formula for me for work.
That's really interesting. Have you ever found it's more of a barrier not having an agent where, I don't know, say a part's gone up and then because you've not had the agent, it's been harder to knock down that door? Or
I would always knock down the door. I would just find the email address or find another way of doing it. Yeah. But no, there have absolutely been occasions where I haven't been able to access things that I would probably have wanted to be up for because I didn't have an agent. Yeah. But I do think the pros outweigh the cons for me there in that I may well in time to come need to reach out to agents and want to have some representation, have someone on my side. Yeah. And it's very useful when you're in contracts and things go wrong or there are eventualities. That's absolutely key, is to have a representation at that point. But for me, in terms of musical theatre, I, at this stage, feel like I'm capable of looking after myself and representing myself at this moment in time.
What would your advice be to, because I think a lot of people who graduate probably get quite stressed out by that when they think, oh, no agents sign me and all of that. What would your advice be to people like that? Would you say that there's definitely another way to go if they don't immediately get representation?
That's a really difficult question, because I don't think I would be where I am now not having an agent if I hadn't had an agent.
Yes.
In the first instance, I signed with Bobby Chatt at Global Artists when she was there back in 2017, and she paved the way for me, and she just made it her mission to get me in as many rooms as possible and seen by as many people as possible. And that's where I kind of did my bit and took over and started to talk to those people and create relationships with them. Yeah. But without that initial agent representation, I would really have struggled. And it's a difficult thing. What do you say to a performer who doesn't immediately, to a grad who doesn't get representation when they leave school? Yeah. The reality is, keep trying. Yeah. Keep trying, keep getting yourself in places. People are doing the right things by getting show reels together and by going and taking classes and working on their craft. Anything that they can get footage of that they can then send off to an agent and say, this is where I'm at now. I've progressed this far. This is what I've been working on. Here's an example. All of that. Yeah. And maintaining those relationships of reaching out is going to be key to building a relationship in the initial instance.
Yeah. Now, what's I think really interesting about you is a lot of the roles that you've played, what it feels like might on paper not necessarily have been your casting, if you were looking at it specifically in that bracket, like both the dating agent in Only Fools and Bumble as well, it could be argued would be played by people a lot older than you actually are. So do you think you are an example of someone who's kind of managed to almost like defy the traditional casting bracket?
Oh, I hope so. That's a lovely thing.
That's another USP.
Isn't it? Do you know, I've actually never thought about that at all, Justin. That's a really lovely thing to think about.
You can put that on your website.
Yes.
A quote from me. There we go.
Yes, I suppose I have. It's interesting regarding Bumble, because I think Bumble has notoriously been played by older actors, most famously Harry Seacombe in the film. And I am now playing opposite Harry Seacombe's daughter, Katie.
Yeah, which is incredible.
Which is amazing, the legacy of that. Katie is slightly older than me. I won't say by how much, because I know she'll be watching this. But
for the record, she's about 21, 22.
Yeah, about that.
Yeah.
But that does work. The dynamic of their relationship works. And in the book, if we go back to the source material, to the original Dickens, then Bumble was, late 30s. So it's not that much of a stretch from the actual casting. Yeah. It's just, I think we have become... I think we naturally get desensitized because we see older people in roles, and we immediately go, "Oh, well, it must be played by someone older." But I think for those specific examples you gave, it is purely that the source material, actually, the characters are younger.
Yeah. Do you think that casting directors and shows generally are getting better at sort of thinking outside the box and thinking less, I suppose, traditionally about casting?
Certainly, yeah. I would really like to think so. It's certainly the case that I go and watch things now and I'm not pulled out by the thought, oh gosh, this is so homogenized, or this is so traditional, or I'm seeing people tell their own stories, which is a really wonderful thing that we need to celebrate. And I would like to think it's getting better, but I think we still need to listen to the people who are saying it isn't, and try and work towards getting more diversity and more a whole plethora and range of people's stories. It's the stories themselves that I think we need to fund. Yeah. I think we need to get at the grassroots, we need to be able to fund stories that actually showcase an entire diaspora of people that this city and ultimately the country has as a demographic, and it's something that needs to be celebrated more.
And on that sort of subject of telling stories, I think pretty much no one does that better than Rob Madge with My Sons Are Queer. And you obviously were part of the performance of You Will Be Loved, featured on the track for that and performed it at West End Live. How did that come about? Because I actually think you have the best lines in that number.
Which lines did I sing?
Oh, I can't remember now. It's It's the second verse. It's the start of the second verse.
Unpack the suitcase and
That's
take
it,
out the
yes.
hat.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which I just think is brilliant. But how was that whole group assembled to be part of that?
I think Rob just fired out WhatsApp messages to all of his queer friends and said, right, who's free?
Oh, right. So it wasn't a case where you'd all been to drop.
No. It wasn't that. I think it was purely the fact that Rob sent out loads of WhatsApp messages and just said to people who were in the queer community, LGBT plus Q, blah, 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 the alphabetic spaghetti,
Yes.
that I'm doing this at West End Live. Would you like to be involved? They are so generous with how they market their shows. And it is the case. Like, I had absolutely nothing to do with My Sons Are Queer. I think my photo pops up in the montage towards the end where it's lots of people who were similar to Rob and doing like living room performances. But they just messaged and said, do you want to come to West End Live and sing the song? It was wonderful.
And the rest is history.
The
last guest that I had here was Kim Ismay, who was saying that she was told very early in her career that she wouldn't kind of truly flourish in the profession until she kind of hit late 30s, early 40s. And I wondered, A, what you were told when you were sort of at that point of graduating, and do you think where you are now is your prime, or do you think the best is yet to come? Sorry, that's a lot of questions in one, isn't it?
It's so
Take a moment
deep
just to think about all of that.
Just digest that.
Yes.
I think I was absolutely the same as Kim, told that I would come into my casting later in life.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that is still the case. The question of whether I feel like I will go into my prime later in life is a question of whether I would stay in the industry or not.
Oh, fair enough.
And I think the reality is you become addicted to performance, you become addicted to performing, and the community, show people are the very best people. There's a song about that somewhere.
Yes. You can Google it.
Yeah, have a Google. But I don't know, for me and my trajectory and lifestyle-wise and what I want from my life, whether the musical theatre specifically will be able to sustain that for me. So I don't know if I will get an opportunity to know whether later in life I will come into my prime, because I'm not entirely sure how long I'll be on the stage.
And in fact, that leads me very nicely into one of my questions, which you've not vetted in advance, but it's just working in sync. Because I was going to say, performing absolutely seems to be in your blood.
Yeah.
But if it hadn't worked out for you, or if you did move into something else in the future, what do you think you would end up doing?
One of two things. Teaching.
Oh, interesting.
So I teach acting through song at Mount View.
Yeah.
And it gives me exactly the same rush. It gives me exactly the same experience as being on stage. I love it. I love seeing other people flourish and working together on projects. Yeah. The second thing would be antiques. So that's my family business.
Oh, yeah.
Is antiques dealing. And I've always loved it. So I think I would love to settle down in a little like Hameau in France and just have a brocante and sell antiques.
Maybe a spot on the Antiques Roadshow.
Oh,
then you've got a bit of
lovely.
the performing element coming in there as well.
I'd love that.
So, yes. Well, we will watch this space on that front.
If they bargain on, here I come.
But back to the performing for now. I mean, from very early on, well, particularly going into Only Fools, you've worked with some real kind of like industry heavyweights and kind of comic icons, like starting obviously with Paul Whitehouse in Only Fools. Did that kind of add an extra level of pressure to what you were doing? The fact that you're sort of performing with and being watched by people like that?
No.
In a word.
No.
Move on.
No, the glorious thing about Paul, if it was anyone else, I would have said yes. But Paul Whitehouse is the most personable, beautiful human being you can imagine. And I remember I had my audition here, where we are now.
Oh.
In this building. Can we say where we are?
We can. We're at City Academy.
City Academy.
It made dreams come true.
It did. I had my audition upstairs here, and I was waiting outside. It was my first proper big West End audition. And I was so nervous, and I'd come in a red velvet blazer, which was like, and a roll neck.
Yeah.
Because I was trying to be like impressive. But I was coming to audition for this Cockney,
Yeah.
like South London show. So I was totally misdressed. And I walked into the audition, and before I got to the door, Paul Whitehouse walked behind me, and I looked around, saw him, was shocked, and I went, "Hi, Paul." And he went, "What?" And then he walked into the audition room and he went, "Yeah, we got to get started. There's some bloke out here wearing a curtain."
Oh my
God. I've actually sanitized that story. There were more swear words. But it was the moment that I knew that I could be totally comfortable and totally myself with this, heavyweight comedy icon.
Did you know at the time that you were going for the dating agent part as well? Because I was going to say, surely that blazer might have helped in that sense.
Well, yeah, but no, the whole audition process was shrouded in mystery. The only thing we knew was that it was a comedy, well-loved family comedy set in South London from the 90s to, from the 80s to the early noughties. There's only a few things it could have been.
Yes.
So I kind of had guessed it was Only Fools, but in terms of what they were doing with it in the script, and I had absolutely no idea. So no, I hadn't come dressed accordingly.
Yeah. But it all worked out.
It did.
And I was going to say, the role that you took on roles that you took on in that show, I think you ended up playing 10 parts. Did I hear you say?
Yeah, about around that.
When you do something like that, I mean, does it make everything that kind of follows that feel a bit like a breeze when you're just focusing on one role?
Yeah.
Because your headspace must be in so many different places.
Yeah, but that's the thing I love. I adore multi-rolling. And I think multi-rolling has a little bit gone by the wayside now in contemporary musical theatre.
Yeah.
We don't see it as much, which I think is a massive shame. When I did The Toxic Avenger, my first job, I played 37 different roles, I think it was.
Oh, wow.
And it was just quick change after quick change after quick change. Like, it was absurd. I've absolutely embellished that. It wasn't 37, it was probably 13. But it was a lot. And so I kind of carved a niche for myself doing that and doing quick changes into different characters. So Only Fools was a breeze for me because it was doing what I loved. And actually moving to just one role, I actually find more difficult because it gets more, there's less play.
Yeah.
And I think that's fundamentally what we as actors should be doing more, is playing.
And I suppose it does make it pacier when you're playing so many different parts because there isn't really time to stop and think. And
it's joyous.
Yeah.
You just get on the roller coaster and by the time you're off, it's bedtime.
Yeah. I mean, and, The Dating Agent, which you're so sort of known for from that show, I mean, for me, it feels like such a prime example of a role that's, essentially a featured ensemble role, but kind of does steal the show. Did you kind of realise what a gift that part would be when you got it? Because you ended up doing that at West End Live, didn't you?
Yes. So I was involved in the very earliest stages of the show, in the workshop stage.
Yeah.
And that song hadn't been written yet, bit of the sort. And it wasn't until Stuart Morley, who was our musical supervisor, and Paul Whitehouse got in a room together and we were working out what this dating agent scene was.
Yeah.
And they then presented me with the manuscript for Bit of a Sort, and I sang it for them, and we just edited and built it in the room. That we actually turned to each other and went, "This is going to be quite special. This is going to be quite funny."
Yeah.
And so that was a gift because I'd never been experienced before being in the room whilst the creatives were actually honing and crafting it.
Yeah.
And I didn't really have much input, but it felt like I was there.
Yeah.
And it was being semi-made with me in mind, which was really special.
Is there a part of you, like when you're part of that, where essentially you create a role and create a song, that feels almost quite possessive over it? That, I don't know, would you want to watch someone else perform that now?
Yeah.
Oh, right. So you don't feel like only I could do that?
No. I don't feel that about anything. And I think that's a really interesting point on covers as well.
Yeah.
And a principal actor must always, in my opinion, ask permission first from their cover. But I always ask my covers if I can go and support them in the cover runs or watch them perform the role, because I learn so much from seeing their interpretation, and you don't ordinarily get the opportunity to see someone else interpret something that you're doing.
Yeah.
And there's stuff that I have stolen. Adam Boardman, who covers me as Mr. Bumble, I watched his cover run, and I would say that now my Bumble is more 50% his Bumble because there were things that he was doing that I just adored and asked him if I could have.
Yeah.
And I think that's what being an actor is, being a magpie. And it's a job share as far as I'm concerned.
Of course, yeah. You've talked about comedy, and you obviously have a real niche in that sense. Out of interest, we talk about people like Paul Whitehouse. Who were your kind of inspirations, kind of as you were sort of honing your craft and just growing up generally in the kind of world of comedy?
Victoria Wood.
Yeah.
Victoria Wood, Julie Walters.
Yeah.
Those, thinking back to Dinner Ladies.
Oh, yeah.
And the TV show. I mean, everything that Victoria Wood did was exactly my kind of northern humour.
Yeah.
And so watching her, there's a scene, I don't know if it was a scene on TV, I can't remember what it was, but it's the Pie Crust Players, where Julie Walters is playing a director and they are putting on a production of Hamlet. And you can Google this. Pie Crust Players, Julie Walters, Hamlet. And she delivers a monologue as this Amdram director. And it is the one thing that I keep going back to throughout my career.
Yeah.
If ever I feel that I'm stuck, if ever I feel that I've gone into muscle memory, or if ever I feel that my performance has become stagnant over, the course of a year of doing it,
yeah,
I'll revisit that video and watch what she does, because
Yeah.
it is the most organic, truthful, belly laugh comedy.
Yeah.
But it's so subtle and nuanced, and she does nothing, but everything. And I think that for me always inspired me.
Do you think we're kind of lacking a bit in terms of, it feels like, again, we had such a golden age of things like sitcoms, again, when things like Only Fools were on back in the 90s and all that. Do you think there is a bit of a lack of kind of like new comedy that comes through in any kind of form, whether it's theatre, television, film, or do you think it's just in different places now?
I think it's in different places. I think TV suffers from the streaming services now. So you don't get the same kind of funding going into the most expensive forms of comedy, which is sketch comedy.
Yeah.
That is a shame, because I think sketch comedy ultimately is it's a stomping ground for so many people.
Yeah.
And it encourages comedy in so many different types from different demographics and diasporas. And I really wish that we did have more sketch comedy. I mean, I'm sure it is well known within the industry, but SNL.
I was about to ask that.
SNL is coming to the UK.
Yes.
Which is massively exciting.
Yeah.
I'm not involved in any way.
I was going to say, would you like to be though?
Oh, I'd love to be. It's exactly what I'd love to do. And this is probably coming back to the agent thing, but I had no idea it was happening.
Oh,
and
right.
so this is why you must try and have an agent
Yes.
and keep them, which I'm not very good at. But no, SNL I would love to be a part of.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would absolutely be my kind of thing.
I think that feels so long overdue as well, just whether it's that show or a show like that.
Yeah.
So I hope that does have a kind of long lifespan in the UK.
Me too.
Yeah. So I'm just going to break it up a bit and throw some quick fire at you. So
gosh,
first
okay.
thing that comes to your mind.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's getting serious now. There's no money up for grabs or anything like
Oh,
that.
got it.
City Academy budget. Comedy or drama?
Comedy.
North of the river or south of the river?
North.
That's for London people, if you don't know. Public transport or private car?
Private car.
You did get an Uber here.
I did get an Uber. I can't do the bus, but that's the heat. It's 33 degrees
Well,
outside.
yes, fair enough.
I needed aircon.
Fair enough. Playing posh or playing common?
Posh.
Fair
Because I am common.
Well, exactly.
So I like
was
to play
just
against type.
Exactly. Soap opera or period drama?
Period drama.
The Sunday Times or the Sun on Sunday?
Neither.
Fair enough. You can just read it all online these days.
Exactly.
Or just listen to podcasts. A star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame or a sold-out show at the Carnegie Hall?
Carnegie Hall.
Fair enough. And then I'm going to give you some options of roles. Which would you rather play? Elder Price or Elder Cunningham?
Cunningham.
The Phantom or Raoul?
Phantom.
Jean Valjean or Javert?
Javert.
Mark or Roger?
Mark.
Bobby or Larry?
Bobby.
I thought I had to put a Sondheim in there.
Thank you.
I know. Yeah, exactly. I thought you'd just stop the podcast there and then. Now, of course, you've done pantomime, but I was going to say, going into a West End pantomime in the way you did, which was such a star-studded affair, doing, Mother Goose, with a script from Jonathan Harvey, who I just think is absolutely brilliant, and then, leads in the form of John Bishop and Sir Ian McKellen.
Who?
Exactly, that little don't know whatever happened to him, but, call in. But when you went up for that role, did you know who you were going to be working alongside?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, right, so right from the beginning you knew...
Yes,
the stakes were high.
Yeah, so the casting director was a dear friend of mine, Anne Vosser, and and she's French. And Anne said to me, Oscar, I know, because I love panto, and I've always wanted to do panto, but I said to Anne and to a few other casting directors, I want to play the dame. That's my... Oh, yeah. I won't do panto until I can play the dame.
Yeah.
And so Anne rang me and said, listen, it's panto and it's not the dame. And I said, well, I'm not interested, darling. And she said, I'm not interested.
No.
It's a no from me. And she said, okay, no worries. It would be Ian McKellen playing your mother. And I said, sign me up.
Yeah.
And obviously that wasn't an offer. I had to audition. So I sent in a self-tape, but I had a psych lorama, like a big white sheet that I pinned up in my little studio flat in North London. Yeah. And she said, you can choose any bit from the script that she sent and you can have a go.
Yeah.
And so I chose the slop scene.
Oh, yeah.
Which I assume no one else did. I'm sure people use like dialogue scenes. But I got a big bag of flour and a 12-pack of eggs. And I just smashed them into my head and like did this whole clowning thing with flour and milk and cream and got on top of my sofa, and I just absolutely annihilated my flat. It was like Chernobyl. It looked horrendous afterwards. But I sent it off to Anne, and the next thing I knew, I was doing Only Fools and Horses at the time, someone came off... I started it on stage. So the iron went out as I was there in an ensemble costume as a market trader. And I had to go, his name is Derek Trotter. They all know him round here. And then the lights flash up over the audience. And so I went out and I went, his name is Derek Trotter. They all know him round here. The lights went up and there was Ian McKellen sat in the second row. Oh,
and so this was before you knew you got the part?
This was before I knew I got the part. So this was him coming to vet.
Oh, wow.
To decide whether or not.
And so surely in that moment on stage, you must have thought, well, it's looking good if Ian McKellen is here watching this.
It was such an out-of-body experience, Justin.
Yeah, I'm sure that didn't... Yeah.
I totally just went, that's Gandalf. I don't know what to do. And I think I gave the worst performance of my life because I was just so...
I mean, lucky you were on that show. Imagine if...
I know. I know.
Just phoned in sick or
Can
something.
You imagine? Terrible. But no, that was amazing.
And I mean, this must be a question that you get asked all the time, but I would imagine that when you work with someone like that, it must be like taking a masterclass in performance delivery every show, just watching someone like that. I mean, was he everything you expected him to be?
And more. And more. Yeah. And I mean, thank God for Jonathan Harvey because he knew what people wanted.
Yeah.
And he wrote this dame not in a traditional naughty, euphemistic, sexual innuendo type way, but he wrote a real life northern woman that could have been in Coronation Street.
Yeah.
And that was what made it so humbling, is watching this incredible Shakespearean actor come out and give this kind of kitchen sink Alan Bennett-esque performance.
Yeah.
And I learned untold amounts from watching him every night. And in the final scene in the trial, the King of Gooseland puts the goose on trial, Mother Goose on trial.
Yeah.
And he stepped forward in this beautiful yellow dress and performed Portia's speech, "The quality of mercy is not strained," from The Merchant of Venice, every night.
Yeah.
And I was just in floods, like absolute. Every single performance, whether we were in Salford or we were in Birmingham, wherever it was, he would perform it and everyone was in tears. And that was the unifying element of him and what he does so well.
Yeah.
So to watch that firsthand was an absolute masterclass.
Yeah. And obviously, I mean, I mentioned the fact that you've worked with kind of really big names as well. And I've asked people this before, but I'm really interested in your perception of fame, because I always think it's really interesting. Like, people that perform on the West End, I think, sort of from looking at it, have a very nice level of fame in the sense that you're sort of known to, you know, theatre lovers, but hopefully you can walk down the street without being harassed by people. So what do you sort of think in that sense? Like, do you have an ambition when it comes to
Being famous?
Yeah.
No,
So
not
do you
at
like
all.
how it is now?
Absolutely. And actually, I really like the fact there are people within the industry, theatre people, musical theatre people, who have a level of fame that I would not ever want.
Yeah.
And I see how it affects people that I work with.
Yeah.
And I find it really troubling. And I think you have to have a very specific type of personality to enjoy that. And I think the reality is that anyone who does experience that, the majority of people that do experience that level of fame don't enjoy it.
Yeah.
It just comes with it, brings with it more money and pros in your life that ultimately mean that you can buy a house, that you can settle down, that you can enjoy making a family and all of those things outside of the business that we all cherish and want.
Yeah.
So from that element of it, that would be lovely. But in terms of being known and having my private life exposed and having to live with the knowledge that other people will be monitoring that, that's not for me at all.
And obviously, you are currently in the West End, in Oliver.
Yeah.
And I was going to say, I mean, you know, you play the role of Bumble, but you've also covered the role of Fagin. And I mean, surely as a performer, I mean, that is just one of the great all-time roles. And the fact that you can now say, whatever happens, I've played that role, that must feel quite special.
That was all I wanted to do.
Yeah.
That was all I want. If you had asked me when I was 12, what do you want to do with your life? I would have said I wanted to play Fagin in the West End.
Yeah.
That was it. And I did it.
Yeah.
And I've done it, I think, 20 times now.
Yeah.
And I'm doing it again next week. It's just, it was the moment that I could step back and say, well done.
Yeah.
You've actually done it. And I'm so hard on myself. I'm my worst critic. And I always say, yeah, but what about what's next? What about what's happening after this? And I never have the opportunity to actually enjoy what I'm doing in the moment. And I really stopped myself from doing that this time. And when I came off stage after that first time of playing Fagin, I took myself off for a little wine and sat and contemplated my life and everything. And I was very proud of myself for getting there. And you're right, it is the most, I think, the most iconic role in musical theatre.
Yeah.
And to have the opportunity to play a part in that rich tapestry of actors who've played it before me is really humbling and special.
Is it quite nice in a way that not playing it 8 shows a week and sort of dipping in and out in that sense, does that make it easier to actually keep it quite fresh and, you know, to be able to sort of like inject more into it because you're not sort of drained by doing it all the time?
I'm sure, absolutely. I mean, Simon Lipkin, who plays the role, is just remarkable. And I've worked with him so many times before. And he consistently, what he's incredible at is playing. He makes it different every single show by altering an intonation or changing his intention on a certain line. His action might shift, his objective shifts, and it's a masterclass again to watch. Yeah. So I watch from the wings, or actually from the fly floor, because I go up and talk to the fly people and say, do you mind if I just... And I'll just perch up there and watch him do his thing, because I don't want to get in his eye line. And I will just steal. I'll steal little bits, and then I'll think, oh, actually, maybe I'm going to try this with that, and I'm going to doctor that a little bit and change that. But I'm an absolute little magpie of the Gielgud, just watching and absorbing. And he's taught me a lot. Yeah. So, yes, when I do get to go on, it's an exercise in playing and trying different things. And I've still not found him after 20 performances. But I think by the end of the year's contract, I will be comfortably in a place where I have my Fagin. Yeah. And that's a really exciting thing to look forward to.
And you mentioned Simon, and also, you know, working with Sinead Holmes, who I think she's just such a kind of, almost like an epitome of new breakthrough talent in a way. Because I mean, the first time I became familiar with her was seeing her do Seasons of Love at the Olivier Awards, which was just incredible. Do you think that there are enough opportunities in theatre to break through new talent?
No, I think that's still very much whenever you see a concert in town or you see certain producers putting on events, it tends to be the same faces. That has been the case since time immemorial, as far as I can remember. New talent tends to break through. You might get one person per year from drama school will go and do a big West End show straight away. Others will work hard. Others will fall into different facets of the industry or leave the industry altogether and decide, actually, it's not for me. I'm going to go and do it. I think that's quite a natural progression.
Yeah.
And there is an essence of wanting people to earn their stripes a little bit and you know, go and do rep wherever they still do rep, which isn't many places anymore, which is a sad thing. But go and do work in regional theatre, see the world, go and get some experience and live your life, because that is ultimately what's going to enrich your performance capabilities that mean that you can enjoy longevity in your career, not just, you know, straight out of the starting gate. I'm in the West End, great, now what? Because I don't think that's going to give you longevity.
Yeah. It feels like there are certain shows now which are almost sort of breakthrough platforms. Like, I think of Six as an example, where it feels like a lot of the people that once you're in that, it gives you a fair bit of longevity because I suppose of the fan base that a show like that accrues. So
the queendom.
Indeed.
We don't have a queendom at Oliver. I don't know what they would be called.
Well,
the urchins, the orphans.
The urchindom or something.
Urchindom.
Yeah, that was just on the spot. We can think of something better. We mentioned very briefly COVID, which I don't want to dwell on, but what I thought was really interesting there, you were obviously part of the cast of Only Fools and Horses when that hit, but you very much embraced the kind of digital space and, you know, kept performing during that time. I mean, for me, what I think is just one of your best performances was the COVID rendition of Losing My Mind on the Underground, which you did. The video of which, I don't know whether it haunts you or whether you celebrate that. Any plans for a reprise?
Do you know, I did plan to do a reprise, and then we went into, was it four? Stage 4, phase 4?
Oh, yes, yeah.
I can't remember what it was called.
Yeah.
But I was going to do it whilst I was doing Cinderella at the Turbine Theatre.
Oh, right.
With Scott Page. We had the most wonderful time, but it was a socially distanced audience. And then they brought in, I think it was just something like phase 4, and so we couldn't do it. But I wanted to have the whole tube carriage full of musicians, but were just dressed as normal people on their commute. And then I was going to start, pull the carriage window down, sing, and then all the musicians were going to start. But it never transpired.
Almost like a twist on a flash mob kind of thing.
Yes, exactly that. So maybe down the line a bit that might happen. But I lockdown was so difficult, and I'm very careful when I say this, because I know for a lot of people it was a really, really difficult time.
Yeah.
But for me, it was exactly what I needed. It was an enforced retirement. It stopped me from centering work in my reality. Yeah. And it actually caused me to be introspective and look inward and say, okay, what do you want?
Yeah.
Who do you want to be? What do you want to give? Why are you doing this? Yeah. And actually that forced stop was massively, massively useful. And I still wouldn't have experienced that now had we not had that. Yeah. And yet that video happened on the day that theatres stopped. I think they call it Blackout Monday now, which is all very grandiose.
Yeah. Oh, God, yeah.
But I got very, very drunk with the cast of Only Fools and Horses, because pubs were still open then. Yes. And ended up on the tube, 1 a.m, singing Losing My Mind through the compartment door into the next carriage. Posted it on Twitter then, which no one uses now.
Now X.
Formerly, the artist formerly known as Twitter.
Yes.
And then I woke up in the morning to thousands of notifications, and my heart sank.
Yeah. What have I done? Cancelled.
Absolute beer fear. And I watched it back, and it was just dreadful. But, you know, it made people laugh. And I got the same adrenaline and dopamine hit that I got from being on stage.
Yeah.
And so it was purely selfish. It was masquerading as me trying to entertain the troops whilst we were experiencing this shared trauma. But in reality, it was me feeding my addiction and trying to, remain relevant and sane.
Well, I'm sure they still talk about it on the London Underground today. So,
On Victoria Line.
Exactly. And I'm sure they're all waiting for that reprise. So it needs to happen. And you obviously had a foray into the world of film with Oscar Wilde.
Yeah.
I suppose you've sort of talked about long-term ambitions, but would film be an area that you would like to go into doing more of?
Definitely. I think it's very. I think a lot of performers who start off in theatre just naturally think that they can move into TV and film. I'm very aware that I am not one of those people. Yeah. I am not a nuanced or subtle performer on stage.
Really?
Yeah, shocks you, I'm sure. I'm very big, larger than life character, and that works for the stage. On screen, no. So if I were to move into TV and film, it would specifically be in character roles and in specific larger than life characters that I would want to portray, which is a very niche thing to want to do. So I'm not putting all my eggs in that basket, but it's definitely something that I would like to explore. Yes. With the caveat that I'm fully aware that it's not my natural proclivity. But
a lot of the comedians that appeared on SNL have then gone into having film careers. So this
Absolutely.
is all the start of manifesting.
Yeah.
That.
Very true. Very true.
Well, I can't believe we've already been chatting for over 40 minutes and I could speak to you about so much. But I think the one thing I'd be interested to sort of sign off with is if we were to have you back in that chair in 30 years' time, it might happen, I'm sure City Academy will still be here, and ask you what the defining role of your career was, what would you hope you would say?
Being a father.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's a curveball.
I think so. I think I would really like to think in 30 years' time, the thing that defines me is not my work.
Yeah.
And I would love to have a family at that point. So I would say, being a father.
And would you want your children to go into this profession?
Yes.
Oh, right. So you'd be that pushy stage father.
Absolute stage mum.
Yes.
100%. Yeah. Only because it's my ardent belief that this skill set that you get from being an actor is the most transferable skill to any other facet of working life. I mean, in 30 years, we probably won't have jobs in the same way that we have jobs now.
Or be AI.
Oh, yeah. But the reality is that human interaction and the ability to speak to people confidently, I think will remain a necessity of working life, whatever happens. So, I think that this is the most transferable skill set that you can have.
Yeah. Well, we'll get you back on in 30 years and see if that's all come to fruition.
I can't wait. I'll bring my bubbers.
Indeed. Well, it has been such a joy to have you here. I know you're going straight on to do a performance this evening in Oliver, for which tickets are still on sale. I'm sure you can find those online. Indeed, there's the plug. And for more information, you can go to @City Academy UK, and we will see you again very soon. Thank you very much, Oscar.
Thank you, Cherubs. Thank you, Justin.